Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're looking at Diagnostic 2 that sits right in the sweet spot. It's a professional level diagnostic tool that's pitched as a budget-friendly alternative to the big names without costing thousands and thousands. This is the Kingsbolen K10 Pro scanner. So I got this as an upgrade to the iCarSoft device, which I have been using for quite some time, which to be fair has been brilliant for most of my needs, but I have recently found it could struggle a bit with the newer models and some particular service functions like AdBlue resets and so on. So I have been using Kingsbolen for some time now, got some impressions, so I'm ready to share what I like and dislike about it. Quick note, I'll put a link to the video description if you want to try this Kingsbolen too. There's currently a 5% discount using code GS5AUTO, valid for the next month. Now let's carry on. So start with something like an unboxing. Obviously I've already unpacked and used the tool, but you can still get an idea of typically what comes included in the package. So the tool arrives in a solid protective case. Surprising for me that the size of the case is the same as my iCarSoft device, which was just 7-inch screen, compared to the K10, which is 10-inch screen. Here I have the device, which has already been unsealed, but as you can see it sits inside the box, wrapped with protective straps, so it stays secure during transportation. First impression on the appearance, it's pretty solid, kind of a heavy, which isn't surprising considering the supported functionality. So you have a 10-inch screen, on top we have some USB ports, one of them for charging and the other for connecting external devices like endoscope or some of their other supported devices. Here on the back we have a placeholder for the VCI, which you can use to store your VCI when you're not using the scanner. There is also an 8-megapixel camera, which I think is pretty standard for the diagnostic devices from this class. So let's have a look at what else we have inside the box. We can see there is a pack of various adapters, which you may need to use with this tool. And adapter number 1 is your OBD/DOIP cable, which is used for the vehicles that support diagnostics over Internet Protocol, which this vehicle actually is, but it's a different question whether it will actually be supported. So we shall see. We also have an OBD extension lead for the VCI. Apart from that, we also have a USB-A to USB-C cable, which is for charging. We have the charging block. Actually, the K10 has a pretty decent battery. I have been using this for a few days now and it's sitting at like 70% now. Also, we have some charger adapters to use depending on the region you live in. There's also a LAN cable and USB to LAN adapter, which is to be used with the DOIP connection. Moving on to the vehicle we'll actually be testing today. We have a Volvo XC60 2020 model, so we'll make an attempt to set this up for DOIP connection and see what will happen. So for the DOIP, we're going to be using the following cable configuration. The VCI is connected to the adapter cable. We also connect the Ethernet cable. Ethernet cable to the USB adapter and the diagnostic tool. Finally, we plug in all of that to the OBD connector of the vehicle. So I can power up the device now and I'll walk you through the user interface of it. So overall on power up you get to the main navigation menu. Unlike other tools where you could use the scanner more or less as an Android tablet, exit diagnostic application, watch YouTube and other things, this Kingsbolen device is limited to more or less just Google searches, but that's completely fine because at the end of the day you have purchased this as diagnostic scanner. The other thing we're mentioning is that Kingsbolen launches software for the diagnostic application, which has proven itself for its functionality, extensive coverage and reliability. In terms of the user interface, it's considerably user interactive and actually it has integrated screen recording, which I will turn on now so you can have a better view of the screen. So there we go, we have full screen image of the central menu, so we have a number of menu options to choose from. The diagnostic tab is just the old-fashioned menu vehicle selection and scanning. The intelligent diagnostic is kind of trying to simplify the vehicle selection process by attempting to read VIN and determine the vehicle profile automatically. On the second row we have the maintenance menu, which is a shortcut for common service functions. The list is pretty long, but we're going to come back to this later. On the right, we have the updates menu. I've already installed most of them, but on initial power up, the list was quite long. The device comes with 2 years free updates package, so we're going to be backed up on software for a bit of a time. The ADAS shortcut is another interesting one. Most of the new vehicles often require calibration of their radars, cameras and other modules involved into the driver assistance systems, so this menu gives you a quick access to the ADAS available service functions. Next to the ADAS, we have the Module tab, which gives you access to some of the additional supported applications like printer, endoscope, oscilloscope and a few others. On the third row, we have the file sub-menu, which takes you to the directory where you export the diagnostics reports and live data recordings will normally be stored. In the repair info menu, there's some more information references, user menu, as well as the camera application. Finally, you have the remote assistance application, which as the name suggests, presumably gives you options for remote control by support team. Of course, if the device has active subscription. And we also have the settings menu, which gives you some options to change, customize, register a new VCI, reset the tool and so on. So moving on to the actual diagnostic part evaluation, I'm going to skip the manual diagnostic tab selection and proceed directly to intelligent diagnostics because we want to see if it will be able to detect the VIN. So we started and we can see it was successfully able to identify our vehicle. So far so good. We click on the diagnostic button and it will prompt you to download a software package for this vehicle. Here it comes the confusing part. How do you know if the vehicle will be scanned over DOIP? After a number of emails exchanged with Kingsbolen support, it turned out the system is designed so it will automatically decide whether it needs to use DOIP or not. Although Volvo officially uses DOIP for diagnostics and programming for all of the new generation cars, but because most of the DOIP cars are still designed to offer aftermarket diagnostic support over J2534 interface, hence the Kingsbolen will be designed to perform the scan, the VCI instead of the DOIP. It turns out the Volvo for the DOIP will most likely be used from the 2022 models onwards or the models where they switch to the Android-based infotainment system and integrate a vehicle gateway module. And when the diagnostic decides DOIP is needed, you should expect to see a notification message like the one on the picture. So regardless, we're going to proceed with scanning the vehicle with or without the DOIP support. So the diagnostic scan menu defaults on the system topology view. The topology view is probably the most commonly used one and main selling feature on the newer scanners, so it's not surprising it's on default. So we have the complete list of modules on the network tree and we have a number of scanning options. The system scan option will scan the modules equipped on the vehicle, and from there you need to access them individually and check for fault codes or access any additional features. Whereas the smart scan and the high speed scan will identify available modules, but it will also indicate which ones report fault codes. So I'm going to proceed with the smart scan. We can see the tool is indicating the fault-free modules with green. Red ones are the ones that contain error codes, and the gray one are module options that exist for this model but are not equipped on the car. So the vehicle scan is completed, and the first thing I like to do before clearing them or analyzing them is to save the diagnostic report. We click on the report button, we can add in some vehicle or workshop information, and then we proceed with saving it. Actually, as you can see, Kingsbolen gives the options to share it over email or Bluetooth, which I've already tested and it works great. So I already know most of the codes showed up after performing some coding on the car, so I'm going to clear the DTC directly and see what remains. So we ended up with only one error code in the DIM module. So if I click on the module, it will display the error code. Then if I click enter, it will get into the module where we're going to see the following standard options. Read the DTC against, just clear the fault codes, module information, access some live data or special functions. So if you open the service functions, we can see that for this module there isn't actually that much options for resets. So we can try to find a better example like the engine control module. We enter the ECU and again we see the same menu options. I quite like the module information tab, as from here you can identify the part number of the module without physically checking it, which saves a lot of time. If you click on the actuation text, it gives you a list of supported activations which could be useful for diagnostics. Moving to the special functions, the list is quite broad and there is a good match between what's supported by Kingsbolen and the available options through the dealership diagnostic software. There isn't anything we can easily test at the moment, but a few examples. We have a calibration of the active grille, misfire counter, test on the evap system and so on. Moving on to the live data tests, we have a list of the supported live data parameters, which again could confirm match the dealership tube coverage very well. So let's select the engine speed, some fuel parameters and the turbo boost pressure. Something I dislike about the interface is that, for example, if I select the boost pressure, if this is the last parameter I want to select, and if I click OK now, it will only give me that specific parameter and will not include the other parameters also selected. If you want to include all of them, after selecting boost pressure, I actually need to make a step back to the main list, and when I click OK button, it will display the full list for me. So now we have the list of the parameters selected. I'm going to start the engine. And I'm actually interested in looking at the graphic representation of the parameters. So this will plot a graph of the parameters selected, but if you want to combine them all so you can track them together, you need to click on Combine. So parameters now combined, but you can see there's only 4 of them plotted, which is the limit of this mode. So if you want to plot just particular items, you need to click on the red arrow on the right side of the screen and select only the ones of interest. So now we have selected what we need. We're going back to the plot, and if I press the accelerator, you can see the boost pressure changing as the RPM increases. Obviously, this is just an example. You can plot and track whatever you need to. So the other thing I want to quickly demonstrate, which could be very useful for the Volvo owners, is the transmission control module support. So here again, you can read the error codes, delete them, but you can also access the service functions. In service functions tab, you have some routines which could be particularly useful if you change the fluid of the gearbox, change the valve body, and you want to reset the adaptation of the gearbox and the module. Speaking of the valve body, it's a known weak point due to the lack of gearbox servicing, but if you know what you're doing, you can track down a particular faulty solenoid by referring to the live data parameters. We can see we have the linear solenoids as part of the list. Enough about the Volvo scanning. Before we exit the diagnostic menu, let's have a look at some other tabs. Apart from the topology view, we can also set the view as a conventional list, so you can choose whichever one you prefer. On the right, we have the same ADAS calibration menu as we found on the main menu screen at the beginning. As we already said, it's just a shortcut of the service functions for the driver assistance systems, which for this Volvo are blind spot assist, 360 cameras and radar. The various supported functions are available here. The last tab on the right is the common service functions. Let's say you scan the vehicle and you want to run the service interval reset or some of the other common functions without having to dig into the individual modules. So that's overall everything from the diagnostic support for this car. I'm going to go back to the main menu, and the last thing I think it will be interesting to have a look at are the special functions list. So if we open the maintenance tab, we can see a whole list of the possible special or service functions you can use the tool for. So we can see key programming function, AdBlue functions, various resets and calibrations. Obviously the support will be on model-to-model basis, so I don't expect this tool or any aftermarket tool to be able to program a key for this Volvo or any recent year European car model. But out of curiosity, I'm going to access the key functions to see which car models are actually supported. So there isn't much available for Volvo, BMW or Mercedes, but we can actually see Audi is part of the list, and the latest models you can potentially do are 2011. Let's try something simpler, perhaps Ford. Well, with Ford we can see the model cover stretches up to 2023, which is actually impressive. Finally, let's have a look at the AdBlue resets. The list here is definitely much broader. Volvo models are supported, most of the European brands as well as the French models up to 2021, which actually tend to be trickier to do sometimes. So I think I'm going to bring the video to an end. Overall, my impressions for the few weeks use are overall good. Yes, it has some points of improvements. It can't do online updates like some high-end tools, but for the price tag, I think it's a very good value for money. Once again, if you liked what you saw about these diagnostics, you can find link to the product with discount code in the video description. I hope you liked this video. Like and subscribe to support the channel, and I'll see you next time.